Hey, what's up guys? So in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Uniden LRD950 as well as its new successor, the Uniden DFR7. As you guys know from some of my previous videos, this is basically the same thing with a different case and a different name, so it's fundamentally the same detector. However, there are a couple different changes, and now that I've got the two here side by side and I've been playing with them, there's also a couple other changes that I wasn't really expecting. So in this video I kind of wanted to just run through some of the differences so you can get familiar with what the DFR7 offers kind of above and beyond the LRD950. So let's take a look. So obviously the first thing that you'll notice is that the case design is different. The older LRD950 has kind of a grayish, gray and black case with like a little silver thing on top, whereas the DFR7 is totally black. It's more stealthy, it's more blacked out. The case is a little bit shinier on the outside, but otherwise it's a much darker case, which I actually like. I like a detector that's more stealthy and less visible, and especially in your windshield, it's not going to be reflecting as much as the kind of silver or gray case, so I like the darker case design of the DFR7. Obviously the name is different, DFR7 instead of LRD950, but whoop-de-doo, who cares, you know? Under the hood, they're fundamentally the same thing. It's the same platform, the same internals, but there are actually a few software differences, and there's actually a new power cable as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at the software differences. Now, if you guys remember with the LRD950, there were a couple different firmware versions, and some of the different firmware versions had different types of K-band filters. Like one version would have TSR, another one wouldn't, for example, and if you wanted to use the different versions of the K-band filtering, you actually had to load different versions of the firmware onto the LRD950. With the DFR7, they've actually given you the option of using either one without having to do this multiple firmware dance. There's actually two different K-band filters that are built in. First of all, you've got the standard K-band filter that's designed to help filter out blind spot falses, and it does a pretty good job. You simply enable that. There's not really any hit to performance, so you still get great reactivity, you still get long-range performance, and great blind spot filtering with the K-band filter. Now, they also have a separate filter that's designed for traffic sensors. You guys may know it as TSR or TMF. In Uniden lingo, it looks like they're calling it TSF, the traffic sensor filter. Cool. Basically what it does is it gives you a little bit of a delay to filter out any brief bursts of K-band radar to help filter out those traffic signals. So if you've got traffic sensors in the area, you now have the ability to just turn on that filter separately, independent of the blind spot filter, without having to, go between different firmware. So it's a nice change, just being able to choose what type of filter you want without having to switch between different firmware versions. There's also now a separate filter for Ka band. It's a Ka filter. It looks like it's basically the equivalent of RDR or Ka guard. The idea is this filter will help prevent false alerts from other leaky radar detectors in the area. So if you've got a poorly designed detector near you, it can cause your radar detector to false alert to Ka, and this filter will help filter out those false alerts on your detector. Now, I don't know the impacts as far as performance. What we've seen with some of the other detectors, like the Redline and the V1, when they have this filter, turning it off actually helps out performance considerably. You get a much faster detector and you get a much better performing longer range detector. So generally what people would do is they turn that filter off. However, what I saw with playing around with the Uniden's detector is unlike some of the other implementations of this filter, with the Ka band filter, it's actually still really, really fast. It's still lightning fast even with that filter enabled. And so what that means is because it's still reactive, my guess is that there's not going to be a long range performance hit if you have this filter enabled. Like, you're not going to get a reduction in range. That's just my guess. We haven't tested it yet. This detector just came out and I just got it, so it is definitely something that we're going to be testing, the filter turned on and turned off. So I can't say for sure, but my guess is it looks like it's not going to be impacting performance. So it'll actually be similar to the Max in that regard, where you get the filter without the performance hit. Now, I don't know exactly what the LRD950 had. If it didn't have the filter and it had the false alerts, and with the DFR7 it can filter out those signals that the LRD950 couldn't. I don't know if the LRD950 did have the filter, and they've simply now given us the ability to disable the filter for better performance, So I don't know exactly what this filter does yet, so this is definitely something, like I said, that we're going to be testing. Now, something else that people are really liking is there's been some changes to the voice alerts and what happens when you start up the detector. You see, with the LRD950, there was this really annoying issue where every single time you started up the detector, it would say Uniden, and then once it got a GPS lock, it said GPS connected.
Uniden. GPS connected.
Now, there's actually no way of disabling these alerts, which means every single time you start up your car, your detector is going to say Uniden and GPS connected. There's been some complaints about this on the forum, and people have even been going so far as trying to install a delay timer to like mute the speaker physically for the first couple seconds to just try to quiet down those alerts. Now, they've actually fixed this issue with the DFR7. With the DFR7, you can have it run like the LRD950 if you have the voices turned on. However, if you go into the menu settings and you actually disable the voices, it disables not just the voice alerts to tell you if you've got K-band or KA, whatever, but it will also disable those initial startup sounds as well. Additionally, one other change with the voice off setting in the DFR7 means that you're also not going to be getting the beeps when you're going through the menus.
Menu. Voice off.
Now, this is a little change, really, but it's something that has really annoyed a lot of people, and I think a lot of people who've been running the LRD950, if they're annoyed by this issue, the DFR7 finally actually has the fix to this issue. So if you're running an LRD950 and, this has been bugging you as well, that's something to keep in mind as far as the updated DFR7. And finally, there is a new power cable that comes with the detector, which is actually a nice improvement over the previous one. The previous gen power cable that came with the LRD950 was a very simple power cable, basically just a straight plug that plugs right into your detector and gives it power. Cool. This new one is actually improved and adds some additional functionality. So if you take a look, we've got like a mute button, we've got a USB port, we now have an alert LED, and there's actually a little bit better connector on it as well. So let's go ahead and run through the different features. With the mute button, it's really nice. Typically with the detector, when you come across a signal, if you want to manually mute it, you just press the mute button on the front of the detector. If you want to lock out a signal, you just press that mute button twice. So the first press mutes, the second press will go ahead and lock out the signal. You can actually do the same thing with the power cable. You can press it once to mute, or if you want, you can also do the lockout functionality by double pressing the mute button on the power cable, which is very nice. That way you don't actually have to reach up to mute or lock out the signal on the detector. You also have a USB port, so if you need to charge your cell phone or whatever, you've got that capability right there. I did measure the power output. It can actually put out about 1.5 to 2 amps or so. For those of you guys who are running newer cell phones and you want your phone to charge nice and quickly, this charger can actually charge your phone nice and fast to recharge it quickly, especially if you're running GPS or anything else. There's also an alert LED built into the power cable. The way that it works here with the detector is when the detector is actually powered on, you'll see the LED turned on, and when you're getting a signal, it'll actually flash. For a weak signal, it'll flash slowly. For a strong signal, it flashes really quickly, and it can actually ramp up and down with your detector so you can watch visually what's going on, especially if you have your detector muted, which is really nice. Now, it turns out with this new power cable, there's also some degree of compatibility with the older Uniden detectors like the LRD850 and the LRD950. For example, with some of those detectors, it'll not only power your detector, but that LED also does work to a limited extent with some of the older detectors. So for example, if you have an LRD850, it's compatible with this power cable. Additionally, if you have an LRD950, depending on the serial number of your LRD950, if you look on the bottom of the detector, you'll see the serial number. If your LRD950 is one of the compatible ones, you'll get a certain degree of compatibility with this new power cable. What it does is once you plug in the detector, unlike the DFR7, the alert LED does not turn on when you have power. However, once you do get a signal, it will flash when the signal is being detected. So you still get that functionality. You just don't get the alert LED being on when the detector is powered on. Now, if you have an LRD950 that is not compatible, that's actually the case for me, my LRD950 is not compatible with this new cable, you'll still be able to power it just fine, no problem. The power works fine, however the LED actually doesn't do anything. So when I have my LRD950 plugged into this new power cable, the LED never lights up, doesn't matter if it's plugged in or getting a signal or anything, the LED just basically does nothing. So it's basically just a power cable with no LED. However, for those of you guys running the DFR6 or the DFR7, that LED will light up to let you know your detector is powered on, and when you're getting a signal, it'll also flash to let you know what's going on with your detector. For those of you guys who have an LRD850 or one of the compatible 950s, if you want the flashing when you're getting a signal, you can actually purchase this power cable now. It's $25. I'll put a link in the video description to where you can pick it up. Obviously, it comes with the DFR6 and DFR7, but for those of you guys who want the power cable, you can also pick it up separately for your older Unidens. Additionally, another option that I really like is for those of you guys who want to hardwire a detector. For $10, you can actually get a really simple hardwire cable. Basically, the idea with the hardwire cable is rather than running a cable down your windshield and into your cigarette lighter and using up your cigarette lighter plug, you can just hardwire it so the cable actually goes down into your fuse box and you just run it along the trim of your car. It's a much cleaner installation. It looks a lot better. There's no cable in the way. This is actually how I typically run my detectors, and I think it's a much better option. You can get a Uniden hardwire cable for $10, link in the video description for that as well, and you'll be able to power your detector. Now, obviously, it doesn't have a mute button. It's strictly just a power cable. A quick note, Escort does provide hardwire cables with a mute button. However, the Escort mute buttons do not work with the Uniden detectors. So while you could theoretically hardwire a Uniden detector to an Escort power plug, the power would work just fine, but the mute cable functionality would not work. So if you want the mute button, you do have to stick with the Uniden cigarette lighter power plug. Otherwise, just hardwire it, and you can use the mute button on the front of the detector. Another nice little change I like with the new power cable is the Rj11 connector. Basically, the plug that plugs into the radar detector has been improved. One of the issues that I saw with the previous generation power cable is the way the cable was crimped. It looks like it could be something that could potentially fail over time. The way the connectors work is you have the individual wires for power and data communication and all that kind of stuff, and then you have this protective black sheath that goes around the individual wires. Then for the actual, clear plastic connector, that part gets crimped onto the wires to hold it in place. Now, with the old generation of the power cable, that crimping actually happened on the individual wires themselves inside of the black protective sheath, which meant that any stress or strain would be happening to those little kind of thin wires inside the power cable, and so they could eventually break and, snap over time, and your power cable would basically die. So what they've done now with the new power cable is that crimp has been done not on the individual wires themselves, but on that stronger black protective sheath around the individual wires. So basically what that means is it should be a more durable power cable over time. Now, I haven't actually heard of any issues with the old generation power cable failing. It's just something I can look at and say, down the line, that looks like this could potentially be an issue. And so it's something that they've strengthened and reinforced with the new power cable. So it's a little thing, but I like the little things like that. So other than that, that's pretty much it. As you can see, there's a new power cable. There's some new filtering options for K-band and Ka-band. Some of the voice options have been changed, so you can make it not beep or not say Uniden or GPS connected when it starts up. And, it's got a different case and a different name. Great. So minor stuff, right? Really little things. But otherwise, fundamentally, it's the same detector. Now, I just got this a couple days ago, just, put it on my windshield, driving around town, that kind of thing. I haven't done any proper testing yet, and so there's still definitely more tests to come to verify for sure that the performance is the same with the LRD950, but we're really not expecting any changes. I think the only real curveball here is going to be seeing if there's any change with this new Ka-band filter. I don't think so, but I may totally be wrong. That's just my guess, so we'll have to see for sure. Testing will always confirm one way or another, and I do like the fact that it's got the new traffic sensor filter. In addition to the blind spot filter, you can do either one or both without having to do this new firmware dance. So really, really nice. If you have an LRD950, is it worth upgrading? Honestly, I don't really think so unless you really want, the blacked out case, or you get kind of annoyed with it saying Uniden when you start up your detector, things like that. If you want to sell your old one and upgrade, totally cool. That might be some of the reasons why, or if you want to take advantage of some of the new filtering options or whatever, you can get that functionality now with the new DFR7. But otherwise, it's the same detector, all the same stuff applies. As I mentioned, we're going to be doing some more testing. I'll redo the setup video, the tutorial to teach you guys all the different settings and features in the detector, once we get everything confirmed with the new filtering options and see how those work. There may very well be some differences between the two detectors that I haven't actually noticed yet, especially since I just got this detector the other day. So if you guys are driving around and you've noticed something that I haven't noticed yet, or something that I forgot to mention, please let me know just by commenting down in the comment area below, and I can actually post an annotation on screen right here in this section to let you guys know what some of the other updates are that maybe I forgot to mention. Otherwise, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. There will be some additional information down in the video description for additional videos, where you can go to purchase these detectors. All the usual stuff will be down there. If you guys haven't already subscribed to my channel, go ahead and do that. That way you can get notified as all these new videos keep coming out. And above and beyond all that, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Later.